When a single shot from 180 to 200 yards drops someone in Washington, you don't shrug it off. You pry open every detail, the rifle, the round, and the hands that squeeze the trigger. I'm a long-time gear junkie and ballistic skeptic, so I'm cutting through the chatter to explain why an imported Mauser rebarreled to .30-06 is the likeliest suspect, and exactly what the forensics need to nail it down. Hello everyone, this is Ted from Line 45. Today, I'll dig into whether a 70-year-old war rifle was behind the Charlie Kirk shooting. Before we dive in, do me a solid. Smash that subscribe, tap the bell, hit all the dang buttons down there. You don't gotta, but it keeps this train rolling and lets me crank out more of this wild gun talk for y'all. Alright, enough of that, let's get back to it. Setting the stage. The first thing I need to get straight is that everything surrounding the rifle in the Charlie Kirk shooting is still speculation. No lab report has been released to the public naming the exact weapon or caliber. What we're dealing with right now is chatter from folks who follow investigators closely and from people breaking down the shot itself. What grabs everyone right away about the Charlie Kirk shooting is the distance and precision. Reports put the shot at roughly 180 to 200 yards. That's not backyard plinking range. That's a serious line of sight that takes a steady platform and a cartridge with enough legs to stay accurate. When you look at what kind of firearm fits that description, people start leaning toward a bolt action. Bolt guns are built for consistency. You're dealing with a solid action, usually a longer barrel, and the kind of stability that makes one round count. Unlike a semi-auto, where rapid fire is expected, this was a single, deliberate shot. The characteristics line up with what surplus Mauser rifles have been known for: durability, accuracy, and the ability to push a full-power cartridge with authority at that range. That's why chatter online keeps circling back to the old Mauser K98S. They were imported in huge numbers, plenty were converted for American shooters, and even the ones left in original trim are capable of making a shot like that. Nobody's saying this is confirmed. Forensic ballistics haven't been released. But the idea that an old surplus bolt action could be behind a clean 200-yard hit isn't far-fetched. It's speculation, sure, but it's grounded in what these rifles are actually capable of when put in the right hands. Why the Mauser keeps coming up. When folks bring up the Mauser after a shot like this, it isn't random guesswork. It's rooted in the rifle's long presence in the U.S. The German K98K, adopted in 1935, was the backbone of the Wehrmacht in World War II. After the war, millions of Mauser rifles and their variants flooded surplus markets worldwide. Importers brought them into the U.S. by the tens of thousands, and American shooters snapped them up because they were reliable, powerful, and dirt cheap compared to new production rifles. You'll still find racks of them at gun shows and plenty sitting in closets. Another reason the Mauser is always in the conversation is the sheer number of national variants. Brazil, Spain, Czechoslovakia, and several other countries produced their own versions, and many were later imported here. On top of that, large numbers were rebarreled or rechambered once they landed in the States. The most common swap was into cartridges American hunters could actually buy easily, like the .30-06 Springfield. That gave shooters an affordable, accurate bolt action with ammo they could pick up at any hardware store. So when people hear about a precision single shot at nearly 200 yards, the Mauser fits the mental picture. It's a platform built for distance, and it's one of the few rifles that could realistically be sitting in someone's safe for decades before being pulled out. That history is why speculation keeps circling back here, and it sets the stage for digging into how these rifles actually perform on paper. Ballistics, and why it adds up. When you hear a shot was made from 180 to 200 yards, you start thinking about what kind of cartridge can stay accurate and hit hard at that distance. That's where the old war rounds like the 8x57 Mauser and the .30-06 Springfield come into play. Both of those cartridges were built for full-power service rifles, and they've been proving themselves on battlefields and hunting grounds for over a century. A typical 8mm load is pushing a 150-grain bullet close to 2,800 or 2,900 feet per second. That gives you roughly 2,700 foot-pounds of energy right out of the barrel. The .30-06 is right there with it, sometimes breaking 3,000 feet per second depending on the load. At 200 yards, either one of those is still carrying more than enough speed and punch to make a clean, precise hit. That's why a lot of folks keep circling back to a bolt action when they talk about this shooting. These rifles were built with long barrels and tough actions that keep velocities consistent. That consistency is exactly what lets you make one shot count. With a decent optic and a steady rest, A Mauser or a Springfield can absolutely hit a man-sized target at 200 yards without breaking a sweat. Even a surplus rifle that's been sitting in someone's safe for decades can still do that if it's been cared for. So when you put the distance, the accuracy, and the type of shot together, a bolt gun chambered in one of these full-power cartridges fits the profile. Now, that doesn't mean investigators have confirmed it. They'll need the bullet, the case, and the lab work to tell us for sure. But from a shooter's perspective, the ballistics line up with what we'd expect from an old-school bolt action, making a deliberate, accurate shot. How investigators pin down the rifle in the Kirk shooting. When you talk about Charlie Kirk getting dropped with one round from nearly 200 yards, the big question everybody has is simple: what rifle pulled that off? Right now, all we've got is speculation, but investigators have the tools to sort it out. If they've got the bullet fragments from Kirk's body or the scene, those go straight under a comparison scope. Every barrel cuts its own microscopic grooves, and those striations will either match a specific rifle or they won't. That's how they know if the chatter about an old bolt gun is legit. Then there's the casing. If the shooter left one behind, the head stamp gives you the caliber right away. But it doesn't stop there. The firing pin mark, extractor bite, even the breech face impression, all of that is unique to the rifle. Examiners compare those tool marks with test fires from a suspect gun, and if they line up, you've got a forensic fingerprint. And in a case this high profile, you can bet they're also running it through NIBIN, the federal database for ballistics. That system can link casings from Kirk's shooting to other crimes if the same rifle has been used before. Add in DNA swabs, fingerprints on the stock or optic, and serial number traces, and you start building a chain of evidence that's way stronger than internet chatter. So yeah, the talk about a Mauser makes sense, but the Kirk case will only be solved when the lab connects the bullet, the casing, and the rifle beyond a shadow of a doubt. What the public can actually expect in the Kirk case. Here's where people following the Charlie Kirk shooting need to pump the brakes. Everyone wants the cops to step up to the mic and say, "It was a Mauser. It was chambered in this caliber." But that's not how these things roll out. Right now, what's confirmed is that Kirk was dropped with a single round from about 180 to 200 yards. That alone already tells you this wasn't some spray-and-pray drive-by. It was a deliberate rifle shot. But naming the exact make and caliber, that's going to come later, and only after the labs have finished their work. The evidence that matters, the bullet fragments, any spent casing, and if they've got the rifle, all go straight to the firearms unit. They'll run it through NIBIN, which is the federal database that links ballistic evidence from crime scenes across the country. If they get a hit, it'll tie this shooting to the gun or to other cases. Then, examiners throw the round under a comparison scope and match striations and tool marks. That's what actually nails down whether it was fired from the rifle in evidence. And don't expect that to happen overnight. Most state labs are swamped. It can take weeks, even months, before the official word is released. Until then, everything you hear about a surplus Mauser is just chatter. The science is what will confirm whether the speculation around Kirk's shooting is on target or way off.